Today is episode 16 with Dr. B and the 6th Ask Dr. B show.
Welcome to the Harness Your ADHD Power podcast. If you're looking for a fresh perspective and actionable steps on hot topics from focus to follow through to self-management and more, you are in the right place. Welcome your host, innovative educator, coach, and psychotherapist, Dr. B.
Hey, DDers. I'm so glad that you could join me today for my podcast show. As many of you know, I love asking questions as well as answering them. If you've listened to any of my previous Ask Dr. B episodes, you know that I've missed knowing specific questions that people have and answering them. So I added this Ask Dr. B format to meet both your needs and mine. And just so you know what's coming today, the Ask Dr. B format will have no more than 3 questions per show, answered directly, via stories, or a blend of both, and a favorite quote of mine. So if you've got questions, here's how you get them over to me. Head over to my website, and under podcasts, you'll see on the right side of that section the Ask Dr. B button. Just click the button, ask your questions, and I'll be notified immediately and get to work on them for the next Thursday show. And in the event that your question is outside the scope of my license or practice or knowledge base, I'll find a guest who can answer your question and have them do so on one of the regular Monday shows. Either way, you'll get answers to the best of my ability to provide them. And just in case you want to know what kinds of questions that people have asked me in the past, here's a few examples. How does ADD affect emotions and perspectives on the future? Are daydreams and fantasies hopeful and helpful, or irresponsible and detrimental? And how can you track progress when you're training the ADD mind? You know, your questions matter to me. In fact, we are definitely a curious bunch, and we deserve to get our questions answered. I know that I certainly have had, and I continue to have, lots and lots of questions, and I need to get them answered, or else I spin or ruminate on them. And perhaps that's you too. If you've been listening to any of my previous podcasts, you've heard me say that you are not what you do or don't do, that you're more than that. We are not defective or less than as people, as human beings. We're just wired differently. And the difference is actually pretty cool once you have answers to your questions. Understand what needs doing by you, and you have tools to get yourself where you want to go. And it's my hope that you'll get some of what you need here. Remember, I'm a work in progress just like you. I've learned a lot about how to quiet my challenges and make the most of my gifts once I got the information I needed. And I trust that you will too, once you get what you need. So before I get to the questions and answers, I have a question for you. And you've heard it before if you're a regular listener. It's about your wins and your state of mind. I can't emphasize this enough, and I'm going to continue to ask you about your wins and encourage you to acknowledge and celebrate them. You are the meaning maker of your life, and you decide whether or not to give away the power of meanings to people, places, and things that are outside of your control, or keep it for your own personal power, the power to choose what something will mean to you and for you. The choice is truly yours. Similarly, according to the essential teachings of Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our happiness. So back to wins. I talk a lot about wins. Why? Because cultivating and having a wins mindset can actually transform how you experience your life. So, have you been taking time to look for your wins? Really look for them. Acknowledge them, celebrate them, share them with others who appreciate what a big deal they are for you and celebrate with you? And are you doing this every day? You know, I sure hope so, because there is truly magic in all of this. And what do I mean by wins? Well, they are those little things that happen every day that are good things, positive things in the bigger picture of your life. And yet they go unnoticed, unacknowledged, and uncelebrated by you. It takes shifting your mindset, and it is totally worth it. Please do not be the person that continues to tell yourself that it's pointless to reward yourself for what you are supposed to do. That couldn't be further from the truth. Those are the very things that deserve to be celebrated so that it becomes easier to do them consistently and more enjoyably each and every time. So what's it going to be today? If you've reached out for help with some of your challenges, it's a win. If you made a point of doing something nice for yourself, that's a win. If you became aware that you've been living your life without a plan or purpose, that's a win. If you made a plan for your life that you're happy with, that's a win. And if you followed through on your plan and have begun to give yourself that life, that is a huge win. You get the point. Celebrate all of them. And none of this half-hearted celebrating. Mean it. Exaggerate your emotions. Yes, wow, awesome. And certainly celebrate the big ones too. It's just that they happen less often. And so celebrating daily wins makes a difference faster in your life because of the frequency. Shifting gears now. Today's episode is all about answering the questions that you have about issues or challenges that you experience as an adult living with ADHD and offering you hope. How much time do we have? Not much. So let's get to it. Thanks to you, my listeners, for today's questions on these three topics. Raising one's voice when there's a disagreement, leading by example and modeling, and deciding about ADHD medication.
This podcast is sponsored by Pure Potential with Dr. B. You can head over to drbarbaracohen.com and find the podcast show notes, grade free content from Dr. B, plus programs and services. That's drbarbaracohen.com.
Now back to being an adult with ADHD in today's world. You know, there are a lot of different reasons why you have the questions you do. It's possible that you have lots of misinformation, or you're missing steps, or strategies, or skills, or a philosophy, or an understanding of yourself well enough to make good decisions on your behalf. Everyone's reasons are different, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here to answer what I can for you. I'm going to share each question with you. I'm going to share a little bit about the topic, offer my point of view about what I hear within the question, where it's appropriate, and my response to each question, which includes an action step to take. Yep, there's an action step for each question because just hearing an answer isn't enough. You need to take action or nothing changes. So do not let yourself off the hook here. You do have the ability to respond to your needs. And I hope at least one of these topics or questions is going to resonate with you and be of benefit. So let's keep going. Thank you to Ron in California for the first topic of raising one's voice when there's a disagreement. He shared and then asks, my number one issue is that I raise my voice when there's a disagreement instead of having a calm discussion. My family does not want to be around me when I raise my voice. I wish I could stop myself from doing this, but the reaction happens so quickly that I have no time to think through that I should be calm. So I blurt out, do you have any ideas on how I can stop this behavior? Thanks for your question, Ron. So first, trying to control the impulse to raise your voice would be pretty challenging without getting to what's behind or underneath the impulse, which is what it sounds like you're experiencing. One possibility is that there is a meaning that you're making out of being in disagreement that is the trigger for your impulse to raise your voice. Whether that meaning is that disagreement equals a threat, or disagreement equals you're wrong, or less than, or whatever meaning that you've given to the word disagreement or the experience of disagreement itself and what it means about you. Because a disagreement is simply a lack of agreement between the parties to a discussion. And certainly everyone is entitled to their opinion, just as you're entitled to yours. Becoming agitated at the opinions of others, in a sense, is saying that others are not entitled to their opinions, but you are. Often the lack of agreement is because the needs of each person are not being met, and hence there's a disagreement. So one approach would be to seek to understand the needs of each person in the conversation, including your own, and see about getting everyone's needs met, or at least understanding as a place to start. Taking another approach, one possibility for stopping this behavior is first to understand the meaning that you've given to a disagreement, as well as the purpose that raising your voice serves in situations where there is a disagreement. Once you know what meaning you've given to disagreement, from there you can pursue the understanding of or the purpose of the behavior of raising your voice. Here's some questions that come to my mind if we were working together on this challenge. Does raising your voice get others to stop the disagreement? Does the conversation shift to you raising your voice and hence stop the disagreement? And is the negative feedback that you get from your family about you raising your voice better than experiencing a disagreement? So recapping your question of, do you have any ideas on how I can stop this behavior? As I said previously, coming to understand the meaning of a disagreement to you, as well as the purpose that raising your voice serves in these situations, is where I would suggest that you start. And if you find yourself stuck when you attempt to get to that information, I would suggest that you seek the assistance of a knowledgeable coach or therapist, or perhaps even a skillful friend to help you get to this or other important pieces of the puzzle. I hope that this input has been of benefit. Transitioning to our next question. Thank you to Petronella in Arizona for the second topic of leading by example and modeling. She shared and then asks, "Hi, Dr. B. Thank you so much for your generosity in sharing your insight through podcasts. I so appreciate you. I am 44 years old and was just diagnosed last year. I had always suspected I had ADHD, but some life-changing events finally pushed me to seek help for my symptoms and to try to have ADHD ruled out. For me, the diagnosis was a way to give a name and therefore a way to seek help to what I've dealt with my whole life. My youngest child is 13 years old, and I have seen symptoms in her all her life. The last few years, I've talked to her about her symptoms and tried to help her with compensatory strategies. Now that we both know that I have ADHD, she oscillates between being annoyed when I try to help her and getting angry because she infers I think she may have it too. I've been very clear that it doesn't matter what she has or doesn't have, that as her parent, my job is to help her be productive. And so whether we are addressing, for example, staying focused as an area she has potential for growth in or as a symptom, it's still something she needs help with because it affects areas of her life. I should note that although she demonstrates symptoms at school, they do not interfere with her grades. So here are my questions. What are the benefits to having my daughter evaluated to try to rule out ADHD? Since I'm still learning to manage my own symptoms, should I be putting my oxygen mask on before helping her with hers? Should I continue to try to help her by offering compensatory strategies, or what would you suggest? And additionally, I'd like to hear about solutions to the common difficulties associated with parenting as an adult with ADHD. Some of the pitfalls I faced with my two older children were impulsively setting consequences, usually too stringent for the offense. forgetting about consequences that I set, and forgetting about rewards that I had offered. That lack of follow-through on my part and my children taking advantage of my memory issues were both really difficult for our relationship. Thanks for all your questions, Petronella. There are several, and I'm going to roll them up into one and respond. So first, I want to comment on some of what it is that I hear in what you provided as a bit of a backstory. And as I've stated in previous podcasts, I'm not attached to being right here, just offering some input on what my brain is attracted to in what you shared and what I wonder about. You shared that you'd always suspected that you had ADHD, yet it took some life-changing events to push you to seek help and try to get ADHD ruled out. So if my math is correct, that's 43 years of suffering with something that you felt that you had, and yet you went to try to get it ruled out, meaning that you went to hear that you did not have ADHD, which is what ruling it out means in my world. I also wonder what it was that had you wait so long if you felt your whole life that you did have ADHD, and why you might want to try to get it ruled out rather than ruled in or confirmed. It's a little confusing to me. I also wonder if there's any shame or other powerful emotion that's connected with the idea of a diagnosis of ADHD. When I read you saying that it doesn't matter what she, your daughter, has or doesn't have, I get concerned again, wondering about the stigma, shame, embarrassment, broken, less than, that kind of stuff, those kind of thoughts that people have about a diagnosis of ADHD. Moving on, as I've said in a previous podcast, ADHD is a condition, or rather, as I prefer to refer to it, as a configuration of the brain, and is most often determined by a comprehensive history taking and a correlation to a list of symptoms, often referred to as the symptoms of ADHD. These symptoms can come from many sources, not only from ADHD. In an assessment or an evaluation with a well-educated and well-informed ADHD professional, it would be just as important to rule in as rule out ADHD as well as any other coexisting conditions. Bottom line, it's important to know what is impacting the quality of your life, if in fact the quality of your life is being impacted. From there, it'll be up to you to decide what steps you will or won't take with that information. Since you were just diagnosed last year, your 13-year-old daughter has grown up living with your symptoms or expression of ADHD. Until last year, she hasn't seen you taking any steps to rule it in or rule it out, not at all. And now she feels that you're looking at her, suspecting ADHD, and she's feeling uncomfortable. It's kind of like, why should she do anything about her symptoms when you didn't for so long? Especially if she looks up to you and she admires you. Often kids want to be like their parents and follow in their footsteps rather than being told what to do, especially when their parent didn't do that for themselves. Make sense? You indicate that even though your daughter has signs or symptoms at school, that her grades aren't being affected. You don't indicate what is being affected or what signs or symptoms are expressed at school or even at home. Talking to your daughter about her symptoms sounds so negative to me, and I wonder if that's how your daughter experiences it as well. In other words, focusing on what's wrong or a symptom rather than what's right and what's good about your daughter. Symptoms and differences don't have to be disorders. A disorder implies a lack of order or unruly behavior or a condition of some sort, all over some differences and symptoms. If the symptoms or the differences are not creating unruly behavior or a lessened quality of life, then is it a disorder? And another thing to consider is that many adults and kids with or without ADHD are gifted individuals, and there are many, many symptoms of giftedness that overlap or parallel those of ADHD. More specifically to your questions, I would ask you to consider what your motivation is or your reasoning is behind wanting to have your daughter evaluated at this time, and what your reasoning is for wanting to have her evaluated to rule out ADHD as opposed to rule it in. I would agree that since your own diagnosis is so new and you're just learning what to do to help yourself, putting on your own oxygen mask first sounds like a very good plan of action, so that you can model for your daughter how your quality of life improves, which would make the discussion about her life much more powerful at whatever point in the future that were to take place. I don't hear that there's an urgent situation with your daughter at this time, which is what I'm basing this on, in part. Continuing to try and offer her help when it sounds like she doesn't want the help is most likely going to encounter resistance from her and impact the quality of your relationship with her. Better to have her seek you out because of what positive changes she sees in you and your life, rather than try and push something on her at this time. And lastly, parenting as an adult with undiagnosed or certainly unaddressed ADHD issues that impact the quality and or the consistency of your parenting efforts is definitely a challenging spot to be in. Now that you've changed the course of your own life, and as you begin to have better tools and insights as to what it is that you need to do to be the best parent for your children that you can possibly be, the challenges will be less about your ADHD and more about parenting itself and the skills and tools that are needed to do a good enough job. Based on what you shared, it sounds like you need reminder tools and strategies, as well as impulse control skills to resolve the challenges that you had in the past. And something worth mentioning is that we teach others how to treat us and interact with us. If by our actions we teach people that they can take advantage of us or use us as a doormat, then some people will. That's just human nature. And of course, there's many people that won't. As you begin to change how you treat yourself and you behave with others, you're going to need to be mindful to let others know that how it was before is not how it's going to be going forward. And to do this with loving kindness and compassion for all. I hope this has been helpful and gives you some ideas about how you can think about and address the issues that you posed in your questions. Transitioning to our next question. Thank you to Sarah in California for the third topic of ADHD medication. She shared and asks, I don't take meds for ADHD, but I find that I focus better with caffeine or the stimulants that are in cold or allergy medications. Should I look into getting ADHD medication? How do I know if I'd be higher performing if I took meds? Thanks for your question, Sarah. Lots of adults have this same question. Here's what I can say about the topic of medication. It's a totally individual, case-by-case decision that is best left to a conversation with a well-informed and well-trained ADHD expert, a prescriber who you can discuss what you experience as challenges in your life as a result of your ADHD and what medication could possibly do to impact or change that challenge, always keeping in mind that there are no skills in pills. What medication can do, if appropriate, and if the right medication, at the right dosage, taken the right way, is perhaps level the playing field, so to speak, making it possible for you to learn to do things that you couldn't learn to do before. It can't give you the skills or abilities that you didn't have before. I don't think that you can know whether or not you'd be a higher performing adult if you took ADHD medication without a thorough conversation and assessment with a trained professional. And even then, since the prescriber will do their very best to recommend what they feel is best for you, should you decide to go that route, there are no guarantees that the medication will work for you as it might for another person that you know. Every single adult with ADHD is unique and has a unique physiology and chemistry and history and current state of health that all factor into the outcomes of taking medication. I hope this input has been helpful to you. That's it for our 3 questions today. I want to thank Ron, Petronella, and Sarah again for your questions for the Ask Dr. B format. Remember, your questions matter to me. If I'm going to help make a difference in your lives, I need to know what your challenges are, what you're struggling with. Help me to be there for you by reaching out with your questions. A favorite quote of mine. Lao Tzu said, "Time is a created thing. To say, I don't have time, is like saying, I don't want to." Time is not something you find or make. The clock and the calendar move at their own pace. Your choice is how you use it. The question that I have for you at this point of our journey together is, are you ready to start managing yourself in time, rather than trying to manage time itself? I hope so. I appreciate you showing up to listen today and in the future. New episodes are released twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. And as a subscriber, the newest episodes will be in your feed by 1 a.m. Plus, you won't miss out on any extra episodes that I create with special guests. Certainly a good reason to subscribe. Perhaps make a date with yourself to listen to each podcast episode so you hear your questions answered if you asked any of me, or just enjoy all the episodes where I'll be talking about such compelling topics as making friends, analysis paralysis, and more in-depth separate episodes as a spin-off from episode 13's multi-level heavy-duty topic. So if you received value today or from any other episode, please share this podcast show with your friends and family, as well as rate the show and write a thoughtful review on iTunes so I know that I'm meeting your needs. You know, it means a lot to me to know that your life is getting a little bit better every time we get together. In fact, you can sign up on my website to receive periodic email updates on new happenings with Dr. B, or just download your show notes and learn about other services. That is, if that's of interest to you. Thanks for listening. Until the next time, bye for now.
Thanks for your undivided attention. If you're hungry to make positive changes in your life, head over to drbarbaracohen.com and see how Dr. B can help you today. Whether you love making changes with one-to-one attention and community support, or on your own with self-study, or could benefit from coaching or psychotherapy, you'll find all the information right there at drbarbaracohen.com.